seats. Our program will now begin. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Nick Going.
Now, you thought you were going to see Carl Lewis on the platform. If Carl is among you, Carl, where are you? He was last seen running, and I'm not joking, but we can't find him. So we've done a somersault, and what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to the how can sport be an agent for change in society. And Sade is standing by for that session, so I don't want you to feel that you've been betrayed in any way, but we hope that that will happen when we can find Carl Lewis. So let's have a bit of video. The panelists will come up onto the platform as the video is playing.
Transformation is about bringing passion to a place where it can thrive, to environments energized with a feeling that here are the champions of today and the leaders of tomorrow. Sports-driven initiatives spur social progress, affect sustainable growth, and transform economies. Sport brings the world closer together and provides a unique focal point around which we can plan, strategize, and formalize initiatives to advance both individual and group development and transform the world.
We've got about an hour, maybe a little less because we're running behind time, as you can see from the clocks at either end. What are the 4 points we want to try and push here? We want your engagement as well. And I want to remind you, if we could, Bob, to have those details up on the panel here of how you can engage with us. We have a number of addresses which are important. You can, if you're in the front, we've got all those iPads. Don't argue among yourselves. Share the iPads in the good spirit that we're here. And don't hog it either. If you're further back, there are other ways of communicating as well. We do recognize, though, that there is actually a Wi-Fi limitation in this room. So if you can find another way of communicating, that would be really very helpful. What are the 4 points we want to tackle with this subject? How can sport be an agent for change, of change for society? First of all, does it benefit communities at the grassroots in wealthy and impoverished areas, or is it just a luxury, picking up the points I was raising with Seb Coe? How can we measure its benefit to society? Can it be measured with any metrics? And how can sport play a part in social progress and inclusion of minority groups, including the physically impaired? Please let me encourage you, keep your ideas coming, whether for this session or any other sessions. We can always organize it. I've already got about 30 messages which are coming through of ideas, including one which says, it's just great to be here. It shows the uniting spirit of sport, and surely that's why you're here, but also looking for ideas about how to further and push whatever you're doing in the sport community. Up on the platform, I'm joined by His Excellency Sheikh Hamid bin Jabr bin Jassim Al Thani, who is President of the Qatar Statistics Authority, Sir Philip Craven, President of the International Paralympic Committee, and we all remember how wonderful it was in London for the Paralympics, Philip, formerly a player of basketball. Then we have Nawal El Mutawakel, Vice President of the IOC, a former 400 meters hurdles winner from Morocco. Johan Kos, CEO of Right to Play, interested and concerned about children particularly, and a speed skater medal winner in Lillehammer. And Wilfried Lemke, who is UN Special Advisor on Sport for Development and Peace. I've given them each 2 minutes to summarize their view of how sport can be an agent for change in society. Don't worry, I'm going to leave the platform and go down to my laptop there to try and start looking at the kind of messages you are sending in. But apologies if you feel there's a Wi-Fi problem. There is a Wi-Fi challenge here with so many of you here. But Wilfried, can I ask you first, if I may, 2 minutes of where you see these challenges at the moment from the UN's perspective.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's very difficult to do this in 2 minutes, but I'll try very quickly. We have the Millennium Development Goals. I don't know if you know all of these 8 Millennium Development Goals. There are 2 that I will just mention. First of all, education. Education is the most important thing for the future of our children. Education. Obviously, and we heard this already this morning several times, sport is part of education. Big part of education, sport. So what we have to deliver first, we have to convince all the governments around the world to start with sport in the very young age of our children in school, mandatory. Every child has a chance to take part in sports, so it has to begin at the school. Very important, because maybe you think that it's normal, but it's not around the world. Sport has to start at school times. Secondly, partnership. Millennium Development Goal 8. Partnership that we can just see here in one of the most beautiful sport locations in the world. And you can believe me, I know the locations in the world. What does it mean when I mention partnership? You see many organizations here around. Naval from the IOC, the most important sports organization in the world. The United Nations family is very close to the IOC. And this is so wonderful to see how politicians, diplomats, come together with the leaders of sport. I see Joël Bouzou from Peace and Sport, who's a good friend of working in this field, bringing people together for using sport as a tool for development and peace. And of course, I can now continue many others, like Right to Play, with whom we are dealing with the young leadership camp we will have in Doha. We might speak later on about this wonderful initiative, bringing people together here in Doha, not only in Doha, but all over the world. And when I look to my good old friend, Sir Philip Craven, I have to mention inclusion, a very important thing. Inclusion means, if I talk about sports for all, I mean really sports for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wilfried. Keep those ideas coming through. Now I'm picking up on one. Where are the women? Female invisibility in the lineup thus far. So immediately, and there's an applause there. Nawal, I'll come to you for your reflections for 2 minutes, please.
Yes, I will pick up from where women, where are they standing today? And this is one of the theme that is going to be discussed this afternoon session and also tomorrow. And I would like to highlight that London Games, just as brillamment in French, was expressed by Lord Sebastian Coe this morning. London was really the place where the women were celebrated fully 100%. For the first time ever, Qatar brought 4 female athletes to compete. For the first time ever, Saudi Arabia brought also 2 females to compete, and Brunei brought 1 female to compete. And by bringing these 3 countries to compete through their female, the London Games really showed the full inclusion of women in this movement that for a long time did not see full participation of female. And by doing so, we had more than 200 National Olympic Committees competing in a total of 26 sports. This is fantastic. And for the first time ever, the International Olympic Committee has 3 female athletes sitting in the executive as board member. And for the first time ever, we have 3 women chairing a coordination commission, 1 in Rio 2016, Gunilla for the 2018 Winter Pyeongchang Games, and also for the 2018 Winter Youth World Olympic Games. And we will have the opportunity and the chance during this morning's session to see how social changes are impacted in now's day because of the sports. Sports has such a powerful impact in using its strength in the communities, in society, and so forth. And to see Johan, to see Tekla Laroupe, to see Carl Lewis, to see all this list of heroes taking this Olympic flame to go back to the community and to see and to show and to transmit their feelings and their love and passion and their determination of the sports and what sports can do to you. The 54 seconds that I competed in 1984 Olympic Games totally impacted my life. And through me, I'm trying to impact other generations. And we will have, I guess, you're looking at me to stop. Maybe no. I'm finished my 2 minutes. I still can continue because you gave us instructions not to speak two more. Anyway, we will have the chance from the floor to interact and to collaborate and see how the sports can totally impact the society and by doing so impact the face of the world. And I will stop here.
Thank you, Noah, but let me just ask you, what impact has it had in your country, Morocco?
It did have a great
particularly
impact.
For women since August.
It did have a great impact, and now for decades now. And I would like to recall one more time my 54 seconds. Never we thought once that an Olympic gold medal would have a huge impact on thousands and millions of generations back home in Morocco. And since 1984, in every Olympic Games, we have gold, silver, and bronze, men and women. We have even women competing in boxing at the Olympic Games, even in taekwondo and swimming, in soccer. And who would imagine this? In 1984, I was the only female in a men's team in Los Angeles. And time now is changing, and this is what I call the power of sport, right. The magic of sports.
Noel, thank you. Let's build on that. Sir Philip Craven, there you were sitting in the Royal Box at the Olympic Park, in the Olympic Stadium. The impact of what we're seeing in sport, of the change that you are seeing, particularly for the Paralympians.
Well, I was sat next to two women in the Royal Box. That was my wife on my right and the Queen on my left. And the world needs women, and men need women to solve the problems that mainly men have created. But anyway, does society need change? Yes, it does. And we need major change, as Wilfried has already said, particularly in education. In schools, for me, sport is the key vehicle to a balanced education where vital life skills can be acquired. And I think Billie Jean King said very similar words. But this is a medium to long-term objective. There's no quick fixes. Does sport benefit communities? Well, I'll tell you a little story. I was lying on my bed in Beijing in 2005, recovering from jet lag, before I went into an IOC coordination commission. I had TV5 Monde on the TV, and there had been problems in French cities for the 4 previous nights, burning cars and all this. And this crew went to Marseille because there had been no problems there, or no major problems. And they were asking the question. And they met a community leader, and they said, well, why have you no trouble here? And he said, well, the people around this community get together once every 2 weeks, play football, play table tennis, and basically get to know each other. My final point, and I hope I've got the time for this, is how can sport play a part in social progress and inclusion of minorities? Well, I would say mythical marginalized groups. And Paralympic Games in London did that. Amazing athletic performance. We've got 4 great Paralympians here with us: Oscar Pistorius, Esther Vergeer, Chris Waddell, and Hu Bin from China. And those performances changed perceptions, but they changed perceptions, they dispelled myths through positive experiences, something that legislation can't do on its own. London 2012 and Beijing 2008 Paralympics were moments of major educational advancement. And I'm not a member of some mythical, collectivized and marginalized group, but I'm an individual member of society with some pluses and some minuses, like all of us here. And I think that's what London did. Do I have another 30 seconds? So, sport, whether to the spectator or the participant, can play a major role in social progress. But a person with an impairment, what extra benefits do they get out of sport? Well, they realize they can be good at something. They develop their self-esteem. They raise their self-esteem. They practice self-determination and map out their own futures. They don't have it done for them by someone else who probably doesn't know them as an individual. They experience joy, feel good, feel excited. They get to know and admire their own bodies. You have to realize you are what you are. and appreciate that you maximize what you have and don't worry about what you don't have. You can be part of or even lead a team like I am. I'm not leading it, by the way, but I'm with a team this morning. And finally, the IPC vision, which was written 11 years ago and was really achieved in London, which is to enable Paralympic athletes to achieve sporting excellence and inspire and excite the world. And that's the kickoff, and I'm sure there'll be questions coming back.
Philip, let me just press you. Given the enormity of the impact of the Paralympics, again, how will it manifest itself? How is it manifesting itself, this change in perception? What is the speed at which this change is taking place?
Well, the change from negative to positive is instantaneous when you have a positive experience. And you know, people who've got a negative experience and they think, oh my God, it must be terrible to lose a leg. You know, well, it is, but you've got to get on with life. And again, you are what you are. But when you see people maximizing the use of what they've got and not worrying about what they've not got, you go from the negative to the positive. You move through 180 degrees in the blink of an eye.
It's that swift and that dramatic.
Of course it is.
Well, that's
you know,
tremendous.
people's brains are pretty powerful things, you know, and they can pick up on things pretty quickly once they're exposed to it.
Johan, pick up your experience, certainly given the kind of work that you're doing, particularly for the lives of children, the perception and the change issue.
Yeah, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor to be here, and I'm thanking the Doha GOALS for inviting us. And talking about the transformative power of sport, right to play is working over 20 countries with now 1 million children in the most disadvantaged areas of the world. And I like to talk about the benefits of sport. Obviously, we talk about education and health, which is two classical areas, but also about building civil society, the importance of looking at transforming communities, particularly after war, and how sport has a transformative change and ability to put people together who previously was fighting and conflict to understand, and we all know that. And I think the last element I want to mention in the benefits of sport is building resilience, particularly for children and youth in humanitarian crisis. We're never thinking about how the trauma is affecting a child, and by participating and normalizing the situation of a child on the ground, giving them the opportunity to experience hope, opportunity, and beliefs in themselves again, and most importantly, possibly belief in the adults. We have tremendous experience in multiple complex scenarios. But what we're also seeing now, and it's one of the challenges, the changes in sport. The changes in sport is, we know sport is built on a pyramid model, where it's actually a push-out system, where the best gets up to the top, and many people is left on the way. As we see in the grassroots programs, that specialization is coming more and more into place, which reduces the amount of individuals participating. And this is a big challenge for sport, not only because we lose out on a tremendous amount of talent, but we also don't play our opportunities to bring more opportunities for kids everywhere. And then my question to sport is, where do we manage that? And you know, we're looking at the participation in sport, it's a pyramid with a basis, big basis in the bottom. But in the finances of sport, it's a pyramid is upside down. And there I go to the responsibility of sport. How can sport and the main elite side of sport play a part in developing of society? How can we take the language of sport and address the needs in society and being socially responsible? And so my challenge to this conference and to one initiative, which I think can come out of these wonderful discussions we're going to have over these 2 days, is to bring together the world of sport, which you have done, the world of the NGOs who's working on sport for development and peace across multiple countries around the world, the corporations who support sports, and governments, of course, the United Nations, to look at the research, the proof of what's been happening around the world, where the benefits of sport is shown, to promote the best practice, not the lowest common denominator, which is always sometimes seen to be negotiated in the big UN forums, but what can we do to be best? How can we develop policies from there and increased investment for the really needed, the children in the most disadvantaged areas of the world. So they have that opportunities that one we talk about, so they can experience the benefit of sport, because that's going to create the change. That's going to create them being the agent of change through sport to create a better world. And if you're not making that investment, we are here only to talk.
Thank you, Johan. A lot of questions from you already coming in, and if you'd like me to mention your name, please put it on in the box so that I can say who it's coming from. But there are already 2 or 3 questions before I go to Sheikh Hamad asking what is social change? What do we mean by social change? We keep talking about the need to make social change and the ability to do so through sport, but social change won't come unless we know what it is exactly that we're trying to achieve. So take that as a challenge as you listen to Sheikh Hamad. Sheikh Hamad.
Thank you very much. And before I start, I'd like to apologize for my bad voice due to the sore throat. But I think the question even you've raised touches well on what I would like to highlight. First of all, I would like to echo what the colleague has highlighted, that education is the foundation for anything we do. Secondly, I'd like to highlight 3 points. One, of course, engagements or early engagements is a key to a society participation. So, for example, I'll cite the example of Qatar. And when we wanted to articulate the Qatar national vision, we had interacted very closely with the public, private sector, NGOs, and the normal individuals in the country. Through this means, we have managed to get very thoughtful insights, commitment, buy-in, and we moved to the next phase, which was the National Development Strategy. Again, it highlighted a more active and feasible role for all of us in terms of how we should participate as a society. I'd like to also highlight in the national strategy, we've highlighted the sport as one of the key drivers to changing the society and changing the way we want to be developed in the future. So this was a very interesting approach that we have developed. Beyond this, I happen to be part of the legacy committee of the World Cup 2022. Even when we want to develop sport facilities along with the associated infrastructure, we do invite the relevant communities to be part of this development, and we seek their views. So by doing so, I think we are able to bring the society on board and to be part of this development through, of course, the means of putting a facility like sports and the associated requirements. But I'd like also to highlight another important point, which I think has been touched earlier in the opening remarks. I think technology can play a major role as well in the society. If we look at Qatar, the region, and some of other relative weathers within the within this region or beyond, we see that the technology can play a major role. I mean, if we talk about the cooling system that we are talking about, the implication and the impact that the cooling system, by reducing the temperature, will bring a more active society in the sports. And they will be part of a yearly, if you like, engaging in sports rather than just for a particular period. And this is something I think very important. Apart from this is how we can go about and creating this opportunity through developing a smart cities. Smart city, to me, will bring about smarter individual, because we will be bringing smarter infrastructure, smarter hard and soft physical infrastructure, and this will bring a more well-developed society. And I think we need to appreciate this fact of being engaged with the society in a more comprehensive way. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheikh Hamad. Your voice is holding up well, so thank you. I think some people would say you have a very privileged society here. How do you want to change it using sport then? What are the metrics? What is in your mind about what still needs to be changed?
I think, as I said earlier, education was or going to be the key driver to change. And we think, and we view, by the way, the hosting of World Cup as a development opportunity. Yes, it poses many interesting challenges, but it also creates an interesting avenues. I mean, hosting the like of this event or WISE event will create different perception, different views, different set of opportunities that we can go about in creating it. And linking them, by the way, to the education, research and development, and many other incubator or entrepreneur areas that we could explore.
Thank you. Let me remind you of how you can still be in touch with the panel. It's easier than everyone raising your hands, and I can see, I think, someone over there, but I'll come to you maybe a little later. I'm getting a lot of questions about education, about social change, about politics, about religion as well. So there are a lot of things I want to get through in the next 35 minutes, so bear with me. But let me pick up, if I can, on that critical question of what kind of change are we really looking for? What kind of change are you looking for? Picking up on that point about what do we mean by social change? Johan.
Well, if you're looking at the education, for instance, it's key, for instance, for every child to become educated, every girl child, every boy child. And if you're looking at the broad aspect of the world, obviously there are still 120, 150 million children not getting primary education. And we need to, that's a global problem, obviously. What we have seen is introduction of play-based learning activities and using sport in the school system. You have children attending higher. It's just literally higher attendance. It's go from less than 50% attendance over 6 years to 96%. You go in programs and seeing achievement. There's an improvement of the academic record. They're going in an average of 25% higher score in academic record just by introducing games into the school. So that's kind of and we all know the importance of education for all to be able to achieve, development, economic prosperity and the thing. But then we're looking at the developing civil society that was mentioned earlier, the understanding of rules. If you want to develop a civil society with the fairness of what President Sarkozy was mentioning, you have to be able to be a participant. You have to play, and if you regularly play year out and year in, you understand the importance of rules, because there's no fun playing if you don't follow the rules. There's no fun playing with somebody cheating. So of course, sport is a principle, and the fairness on how sport is built can teach us extremely societal value. And we have to understand that that has to be an access on a regular basis for everybody to be able to create that civil society you want of fairness.
Again, let me just keep pressing you, because there are several questions here about social change. What kind of social change are you looking for, or are we expecting? Nawal?
I'd just like to highlight one point that is very dear to me. Beside my Olympic life as an IOC vice president, I also evolved within NGOs, just like Johan back home in Morocco. And my aim, number one, is to go to the rural area, up in the mountains, where there are female and male who do not even understand that sports exist, but they live in altitude, and they have the energy and the passion also. If someone like Johan or like all these heroes, or a professor or teacher, takes them and show them the path to take, the path to glory. And when you see today all these Kenyan athletes, all those Ethiopian athletes, all those Moroccan athletes, they all come up from the mountains. I myself did never compete during my beginning, during my youth days, in a normal synthetic stadium. I used to run out in the streets because we discovered all this through our education system, some late in their days and some on time, but I still believe that education is a must to show all these young girls and boys how to get access to the sport.
Can I just pick up? Because there's a specific question on this about women, specifically to you. How do you think women athletes from conservative patriarchal communities can overcome the social pressure surrounding their participation in sports, especially male-dominated sports?
Well, can we move this question to the afternoon session, or do I have to answer it now?
It's come through now, so just give me a quick answer,
no problem.
Please.
This is a topic also dear to me, because I see Donna Di Verona here, Beth, and we will be discussing this afternoon and tomorrow. I come from a Muslim country, from an Arab country. I come from an African country, and I'm very proud. My event was the 400 hurdles, the hurdles of life. but I learned to overcome one at a time. My mother played volleyball, my father judo. And it was also a difficult environment for me to go forward, but I did it because of the passion and the love of the sport that I had then, and because of the encouragement of my surrounding and my entourage. When we speak about the entourage, is the coach, is the neighbor, is the father, is the minister of sports, is the president of my club and of also my national federation and so forth. And I was lucky enough to have all this entourage encouraging me on a daily basis until I won my Olympic medal. But then it was unusual. And after my gold medal, we had athletes from Tunisia, female athletes, not attending the Olympic Games, but winning gold, silver, and bronze. From Tunisia, Hasiba Boulmarqa from Algeria, Ghada Souaa from Syria, and you name it, athletes from Bahrain, from Egypt, and I have here my dear friend from IUC swimming. Rania, sorry Rania, j'ai un trou de mémoire. And you name all the long list of heroes, women heroes coming from an Arab world. And my aim and my dream is to see athletes not attending from this region the Olympic Games, but also winning. And I believe that the future of sports is feminine, will be feminine.
Thank you. Let me pick up with Wilfried again, that point about what kind of social change, what kind of societal change is really wanted and achievable.
Yeah, sorry, but I have to just add what Naval said to the question, because I have, I think, minimum one very concrete example how we can change things through partnership. I don't know if you know that the Iranian women football team were suspended because their players had headscarves. That was something like 2 or 3 years ago. And when we got this information, we immediately start asking about this rule, not to allow Muslim girls to play with a headscarf. And then we changed this through FIFA. Now the girls, the women from Muslim countries are allowed to play football, normally a man-dominated, male-dominated sports, that they are allowed to play football. And so we should do everything to participate women in the sports, especially in conservative countries. And it was just mentioned that in the last Olympic Games, we had the first time that all the countries had female participants. And I don't know if you remember the 800-meter runners when all the people stand up and applauding her running fast behind the leading group. And so there are very many concrete things that I can see all around the world. And we, of course, have to support them. And the federations have to support all these initiatives. I was very proud when I've been in Palestine 2 or 3 years ago when they had the first women's football league. And that was such an important message for all the region, that in Palestine, where they have 99% of Muslim people, that they have a women football league
so
right
help
now.
us define what kind of society change, social change are we looking for through sport?
On different fields. We fight against poverty, against hunger. If the children hang up in the afternoon looking how to deal in drugs and crimes. No, we don't want to have them in crime and drugs. We don't want to play them with a PlayStation. We want to go them out in the field and having fun, respect each other and get friends in the field of sports. That's how we can change their social life and fight against stereotypes all around the societies.
Sir Philip, on the definition of social change, what are we looking for? What do we need to aspire to?
Well, I think some people might say the world's going out of control. You know, people are living longer, but it seems that we've got to speed everything up. And I think coming back to what Johan said, great to be proud of yourself. I was very proud to be British at the Games in London. Great to have pride in your country. But then you need to know how far you can go with that pride and you need to interact, coming back to what Wilfried said about partnerships. And so, and you don't pick this up learning off a blackboard and learning chemistry, I'm sorry, but you pick it up over time subconsciously when you practice sport over many years. And so this is what has to be learnt in the world. We are in the 21st century. We're not at the end of the 19th century when most of these educational programs were devised. And so this is what sport can do. And can I just read you one thing about the importance of life skills? I picked this up when I was in China prior to the Beijing Games. It was written about 2,500 years ago by a man called, pronunciation will be bad here, I'm sorry, but it's Su Xia. And he was around at the time of Confucius. And he said, a man who treats his, of course it was a man then, women weren't included, I'm sorry about that, but it's changed today. But a man who treats his betters as betters wears an air of respect, who in serving father and mother knows how to put his whole strength, who in the service of his prince will lay down his life, who in intercourse with friends is true to his word. Then he says, some may say of him that he still lacks education, but I, for my part, should certainly call him an educated man. And I think that's where we want to get to. We want people to be able to really communicate with each other around the world and to give a little instead of always taking. And you'll learn that through sport.
Let me pick up on several questions, and Wilfried, picking up from what you said right at the beginning about education. There are a lot of questions here. I can't go through them all, but let me pick up a selection here which underscores just how importantly a lot of the delegates here are thinking about this, particularly when it comes to the focus here on schools is good, but in developing countries, half of the teenagers are out of school. What about them? Which leads me to another question, which I can't immediately find, which I found here. Which is about the focus on schools. In other words, there's another question which talks about how can the international community, how can the rich countries stimulate the investment in sport, stimulate the awareness of sport, and stimulate sport in countries where simply there isn't the resource to do it?
Yeah, this brings us again to the Millennium Development Goal partnership, number 8. So right now we will have in May a World Congress of the Sports Ministers who are responsible finally also for education and school, physical education at school. And we have to convince them to get in partnership as well. I don't know if anybody knows, no, definitely my friends from IOC know this Zambia Youth and Sports Center. That is such a very, very positive symbol of how you can use in a developing country like Zambia in a partnership with federations, with the IOC, with the government, and the local people. This is not only for the elite, but it's as well for the local people. A wonderful example how you can do this. But there are, thousands of positive, good examples how you can, what you can do very precisely in these sport projects all around the world. But you have to be smart and clever, and of course you have always to involve the governments and the people on the ground. Never have the idea that somewhere in Europe or in the US you can find an idea and say, okay, we will have this sport in this country, in this region. This will never work. You have to involve all the people and then try to convince them that they all be part in this project.
Well, again, let me pick up. We are looking at sport being an agent of change for society. A couple more questions here. Is it true that sport starts at school, but in developing countries like India, it's the lack of equipment that causes lack of sports education? What do you say to that? And from Glory Cassie from the Eunice International Football Academy, I'd like to know how sport and education will go together to improve lives in impoverished areas like Africa. Johan.
Well, I'll have a little bit more pragmatic. I mean, it's actually pretty simple. You have to train the teachers in sport. And by that, you just kind of create sport teachers. I mean, and they don't exist. You have to have fields to play on. They don't exist, and they don't have equipment. So all of this just require coordination, structure, systems, and investment, and strong facilitated organizations who does that in the world today. There are many of them who does it, and I think and then of course you have to work within the ministry and then kind of work with teacher training and be able to do that in particularly poor countries. When we looked at this in Benin as an example, we are now working with 200,000 children in the early ages just to get ready for school and train 3,000 teachers to be able to do play-based learning, which has increased their affinity to school and their learning outcomes dramatically. It's just a simple example, and we are a small organization. If you're looking at what Sport for Development organization total budgets around the world is between $120 million. I say I'm a big Chelsea fan, and Chelsea Football Club is a big supporter of Right to Play. But Abramovich has paid more than double that in severance fees to managers over the last 5 years. So, I mean, that says a little bit of the misconception between the investment in the elite sport in comparison to what needs to be done on the ground.
But that question about the correlation between sport for kids and equipment, just the basics.
It's actually, the equipment, it's always going to be available if you have the teachers and the leaders trained to be able to understand it. You have to have the individual, this is human capacity, which is the key. The equipment will finally be found, and there will be a tremendous amount of creativity to find out how to use equipment. But of course you need equipment. But the number one priority is building human capacity, the understanding of how to do proper child protection, gender equality program for children in the most disadvantaged areas.
Noel, or Wilfred, or Philip, or Sheikh Hamad, do you want to answer on that at all? Because I've got other things I can move on to. Sheikh Hamad.
I'll just like to highlight a couple of points. One, we cannot disconnect society from the other factors, you know, the economic, the environment, and the rest. So it goes all comprehensively. Secondly, we have to have a very reliable data. Data can provide us a clarity in policy making, in decision making, and so on. So these are very extremely important things that we can do. I'd like to also cite, I think, an interesting example of our case in Qatar. We have, for instance, 189 expatriates nationality here. They are part of the development in the country. They live and they are part of the development. But what they intend to do, also they are going to transfer this knowledge and know-how to their respective countries. So this is one of the other means of how to stimulate as well, not just you know, the social dimension, but the overall development of whatever is happening, for example, in Qatar.
Thank you, Philip.
Really, just to mention, I was at the WISE Summit, which was the education summit a month ago here. And Her Highness Sheikha Moza launched her program called Educate a Child. And so, yes, there are many children who don't get education around the world at the moment. Hopefully with this inspirational project and others, that's going to change. But coming back to what Johan said, and it must be, of course, education for all children, children with impairments, etc. But coming back to what he said, I've just lost my train of thought now, but it is important, but yes. But if you are introducing education to some new areas of the world, then get it right first time. Talking about educating the teachers to use sport, to use play. And it doesn't cost a lot of money if a teacher is innovative.
But of course, basic kit. And for
but you can make a ball out of near enough anything. I saw a project going back probably about 30 years in Sri Lanka, where they made wheelchairs out of wood. The wheels were made out of wood. They still played wheelchair basketball.
Fantastic. A lot of questions. Let me pick up. We've got literally 7 minutes to run, so when that goes to 12:20, we'll be moving on, and Carl Lewis has been tracked. And if you want to put a question to him as well, or log that now, then go back to that way of delivering that question, which is on the same addresses as you've seen before. And Bob, I don't know if you want to put those up. But picking up on what Lord Coe was talking about, particularly the next generation and social change and social media, and particularly the impact that the Olympics have had, several questions here, particularly about what's broadly called youth. We've had 260 comments so far, by the way, in the last 40 minutes, so you can see I can't get them all over to you, but I'm trying to pull out the ones which are trending very positively. The general perception is that the loss of interest in sports by youth, kids, mainly due to the sedentary nature of activities and the developing addiction to social media. How can such platforms, in other words, the new digital devices, actually be used to promote sport rather than discourage it? In other words, that in its own way is a societal change. How do people use the digital technology? Any ideas up here? Wilfred.
Well, this is a big challenge for the future, definitely, because you can see this all over the world, that children start their morning playing at the breakfast table or communicating at the breakfast table. I don't know if you have children at home. I hate this at the breakfast table and lunchtime and dinner time, always this, and we have many conflicts about this. So we have really, because we have the passion for sports, we have to make very strict rules in our families, in our societies, at school, and bring them out. They must get the spirit that they love sports. And this is very important, but please allow me one question. Somebody before asked, how can we change these things because we are lack of money? Never ever, and I worked 9 years of my life as a politician, never believe when a politician says there is no money. Never ever believe this. There's always money on the table, but they set their own priorities, how to spend money.
Well said, Wilfred.
And if we would look at the budget, military budgets, and look at the sport budgets, then we have to convince politicians, if they only would cut their expenses for military things, maybe 2%, we can deal with all our sport projects around the world. You can believe me.
I'm still pursuing that question. If anyone would like to ask a question, can you put up your hand? And there are 2 or 3 people with microphones who will come to you in these last 5 minutes. There's one over there I can see immediately. But Johan and Naval, this issue of social media, of how critical that is to generating a passion for sport, particularly among the next generation.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, why do we have to answer questions through an electronic device? Why?
Well,
I mean, for me, it's much better to see and feel the passion coming from the floor rather than having it.
I think 200.
I mean, these people come from so far to speak, and we don't hear them, we don't see
260.
them.
There are going to be task forces.
But yeah, and we are encouraging in our session to use the electronic device, and here we are trying to give advices how to use, not to use them for our children anyway. I believe that from what I heard from studies from the United Nations, that around 2.6 million people will die on a yearly basis because of inactivity, physical inactivity, because they are in front of their device playing day and night. Even spouses today, husband has no longer anything anymore to say to his wife, because when he comes at night, he's talking to his computer or on his phone, and same the wife. And when the children see that, this is a really bad advice.
So how can it be used on sport?
At the IAAF, I would like to give an example of the IAAF, which is the International Governing Body of Athletics. We launched this program called Kids Athletics, where we fabric things from wood and plastic in countries who do not afford, who do not have the budget to fix things like that, and try to do activities towards kids aged from 9 to 14, which is the most difficult and critical age. And it is now generated in 212 federations. And there are lots of ideas today towards the youth to keep them away from this electronic device and this new technology. And how many governments today, Gidrut and myself used to be ministers of sports in our governments, how many governments are using physical activities and sports as a top priority? I don't think very many. And the budget is very, very low. I know my budget was 0.6%. And when I see today, to organize the Olympic Games, we want government to work with the organizing committee, with National Olympic Committee, and with all the stakeholders to understand the power of sports.
Right.
And the power to organize the Olympic Games.
Johan, quickly, because I want to get two questions, one there and one over there, about the use of social media to stimulate interest from kids.
No, I just want to turn the computers off and get kids outside and play. That's the quickest answer I can do. Just turn them off. Actually, it's pretty simple.
But what about creating a passion for sport as well, because of sharing information about sport?
I mean, there is incredible technology, and people are using it in amazing ways to infuse the power of sport to people. So I think there's, you know, both the gaming industry, the media, and the federations are using the technology to promote their sport. But in the end, you know, you need to have kids out playing. I mean, it's pretty simple. So.
We've got 3 minutes to run. Let me just get two interventions, please, from that microphone and this microphone here, please.
Hello, good morning. My name is Alexis Liras, and I'm from Georgetown University, and where I'm Generations for Peace postdoctoral fellow. First, I'd like to say a big thank you for Doha Goals, and basically, I'm here, not just me, with 400 students. Can you please stand up and give a big hand to Doha Goals? Can you please stand up? We'd like to first send a big thank you for making things happen, and I believe that this is, please stay there for 1 minute. What's unique about this forum is these students from great universities. They are the future. And then we talk about looking forward. How can we change the priorities of the sport industry and the community that we are together to train them, invest in them, so that in the future they will practice sport differently? Part of the problem is that the way we perceive sport is just about competition, or it's just about a few. How do we change that so that we change the priorities to invest in them? Thank you.
That is very much what we're trying to do in this session. Thank you very much indeed. And I can encourage you to sit down now, unless you want to stand up throughout all these sessions. Can you be very quick, please, because I'm under time pressures?
Sure, I'll try to be as quick as possible. It wasn't a question. I just wanted to add on what you were saying in regards to social development mainly. Sports is not only kicking a ball or going to the play field. What is the most important in sports, I was discussing that with Ian Thorpe the other day, are the values and the philosophy of sports. What people need to understand, and keep it simple, stupid method, is that sport is mainly about patriotism. It teaches you patriotism. It teaches you fair play. It teaches you respect of the other. You don't ask a person if he's Muslim or Christian when you play sports. You don't really care if he's black or white if you play sports. These are the values that we need to incorporate more and more in the world of sports. Sports is a lot more than just doing sports.
And do you think sport will change society?
Of course, definitely, because if you install these values, you're already changing society.
One more voice here, and then finally to the platform, please.
My name is Saif Al-Hajri. I'm a chairman of the Sport and Environment in Qatar. And really, I didn't hear much about sport and environment. We are facing a lot of challenges. As you know, climate change is part of it. So through sport, we can really also correct our behavior. So my message here is let us change to stop climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. And there are, Nawal, I have to tell you, there are quite a lot of people who want to talk about climate change, but we're out of time. Sheikh Hamad, a last word, please.
Yeah. I think the experience we had, for instance, in Qatar, when we have declared a sport day, the implication and the impact behind that particular sport day was so significant. And in fact, it has crossed a clear message to all kinds of levels in the community. And it is a very interesting, I think, tools that we have used to empower people into moving into sports. The second point that I wanted to highlight is, I think, the urban planning. The urban planning has a major, I think, say to facilitate for a more encouraging atmosphere for sports. So we have made, for instance, here in the country, initiatives to develop facilities within these small communities so people feel the accessibility is easy and comfortable for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Does anyone want to add anything more? I'm under time pressures. Nawal.
I just would like to speak about the London Games and how those games totally transformed the city, the nation, and the youth because of environmental issues also. I recall when Sebastian Coe in 2005, during the evaluation commission, he showed us an area in East London which was really a slum area. And when you see it today, hectares and hectares in this Olympic Park with the 80,000 stadium and also with a village for the athletes hosting 10,800 athletes and the indoor arena and so forth. This is the legacy. This is about respecting environment. This is about the power, again, one more time, of the sports and what the Olympic Games brings to you. So sports is a top priority in the IOC agenda, and I would like to congratulate Qatar for hosting an event dealing with environment only.
There are still legacy issues in London. Wilfred, did you want one last word, please?
One last word from me is the idea that everybody has to leave Doha was a commitment is a great idea. And really, that means all of you must give us a commitment for the next year. I said this to the students around, but also to the big federations here. Everybody in this big hall has a chance to change sports around the world. Please make a commitment when you leave Doha that will change the world of sports in different meanings and different places, big amounts of money. This morning I just heard a commitment by my neighbor who said, listen, we will make a film for the German TV about the youth leadership camp in Doha in January 13th, Sky Sports. And that's wonderful. This is a very concrete, precise commitment. Let's please do so.
Nick? Just to say, don't just have the youth here, but listen to them. They have most of the solutions that the world needs, including climate change. Redefine sport for all, what it should mean in the 21st century, and get governments to not park sports departments with any old department. Make sure that sport is, if it's allied with any, it's education and possibly health. That's where we should have partnerships.
Thank you all for this staging post in the discussion, early on in the discussion. I'm sure those kind of motions, Wilfred, will appear well before the end of this meeting tomorrow night. Thank you all very much indeed. Sade, the floor is yours for the next session, and I'll be back shortly to discuss issues of safety. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thank you.